Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today I have a review on New World, and the expansion that just came out with it, Rise of the Angry Earth. We're going to explore the good, the bad, and the ugly with this game. I played this game for about 120 hours over the last 3 weeks, and I can tell you straight off the bat, a lot of the bugs and difficulties with the game that it came with on release have been sorted out. Now, while bugs still exist, I would say about 1% of them are really game-breaking, but not in the way that you think, but we'll circle back to that. The initial premise of the game, if you didn't know, is you're in a world set in the 17th century where you get shipwrecked on an island called Eternum, and you have to take on the evil forces called the Corruption, which threatens the world and throw it into, well, a corruption of sorts. The combat in the game feels great, and it feels intuitive. It's not your regular turn-based action style like World of Warcraft, but more free fluid like in Skyrim. The way the structure of the combat works is you pick up a weapon and you can just go ahead and start swinging it as much as you want, and as you get more proficient and gain experience with the weapon, you unlock a skill tree with that weapon. And in this skill tree you unlock different abilities, passive modifiers, and different attacks with that weapon. You're also allowed to equip 3 of the abilities per weapon at a single time, however you can have more. Now in combat, you actually have 2 weapons that you're allowed to use actively. You have your active weapon held in your hands, and you have your reserve weapon on your back. And you can swap these 2 out interchangeably at any point in combat. You also aren't locked into any 2 specific weapons and can change your weapons out and even respec their abilities when you're out of combat. The different categories of weapons are, you have your single-handed weapons such as your swords, flails, shields that you can use with swords and flails, your rapiers and your hatchets. You have your 2-handed big weapons such as your spears, great axes, great swords, and warhammers. And lastly, you have your ranged weapons, your bows, muskets, blunderbuss, fire staffs, life staffs, which is basically a healer, ice gauntlets, and void gauntlets. The way the damage scales in the game is based off of your character's stat attributes, which determine how much damage is done and also how much life you have. You can see what stat modifies which weapon, and you are even allowed to respec these stats at any time. Now, as you level your character, you will get more stat points to assign however you like, and you will get stats from the armor that you wear as well. Now, let's move on to the next category that I think the game did extremely well, and that's the resources and the material and the creation aspect of it. Now, while these are pretty self-explanatory, the approach is very similar to original Runescape, where you're allowed to level all these up whenever you want in whatever order you want. The different categories of these are gathering, which includes logging, mining, harvesting, fishing, and skinning. And then you also have refining, which is like smelting ore, stone cutting, so working with stone and gems, tanning, working with leather, weaving, working with fiber, woodworking. Lastly, you have the actual crafting, such as armoring, weaponsmithing, arcana, cooking, engineering, jewel crafting, and also furnishing. Also, I should mention at this point that you can buy multiple houses in the game in different cities. A very nice feature that is added to the game is that everything in the game for all of the gathering and crafting above gives your character overall experience to your levels. So if you wanted to have a relaxing time, you could sit in the woods and turn the in-game music on max and just sit there logging trees for a few hours, and you can get some levels with that too. Also, as you level up your character's main level, you can actually unlock the ability to use better tools for harvesting, which makes the process of leveling the skills mentioned above a lot easier as well. On top of that, the scenery is just amazing, and you could sit there and look at the scenery, gather some stuff, and just feel immersed in the game. It really feels alive, and even the music complements it, and they have some great scoring on that too. It's a really beautifully aesthetic game. Now, here's just a few clips of some areas I could find just to give you a taste. As a plus, it doesn't really feel like a grind to get gathering to max level, and it's a pretty relaxing thing to do, which is really refreshing if you're coming out of other MMO RPGs specifically World of Warcraft or even Runescape if you have ever played that before. In terms of the story progression in the game, I would say it's kind of meh. It doesn't really do much to engage you. Some of the NPCs are voice acted, and it's alright, but you just kind of want to move on to the next thing. Now, while you're doing the main storyline for the game, you will move from area to area until you reach level 60, at which point you'll go to the new expansion zone, and you can gather and craft as you're moving throughout the game at your own pace, which does feel nice. Now, the next category that we have is the dungeons and the expeditions. And honestly, I'd kind of put these in the bad category, but not because that they're bad, but they feel different than the rest of the game, and compared to the rest of the game, they feel rather lacking, and it's almost like they were added in after the fact, as they feel a bit bare bones and boring compared to the rest of the game. Now, don't get me wrong, some of the dungeons and the expeditions really do feel good, but there's not really much of a replayable value with them. It's not like in World of Warcraft where you have Mythic Plus, where you can constantly run Mythic Plus, get better gear, repeat, go to higher keys, doing all that stuff. Now, while there are mutated dungeons, which is essentially a low tier version of Mythic Plus, it's not really the same thing and still feels kind of easy, even up to the higher ones that you get to. Now, for PvP, however, I'm going to say that this is great. You have various different arena modes, like your 3v3s, and you also have wars and assaults on settlements and forts, which just feel cool. It's like open world PvP, where you essentially launch a war on other players and forts, and it just gives it a whole new flavor for the game. And this is, in my opinion, the real endgame content for New World. Now, to get into the expansion, there is a new zone that came out called the Elysian Wilds, and the gathering and crafting got bumped up to level 250, whereas before they were 200, and there is a new main story quest. There's also a new weapon, which is the flail, and there's new dungeons and expeditions. However, the real game changer, in my opinion, not that really much had to be changed, is they added mounts to the game. While yes, you already had an effective teleportation system, as you are currently able to fast travel to all travel points and cities that you've been to before, it makes traveling to new places and to points of interest much better, and it also makes the gathering much easier and feel even less tedious than it was before. Now, to get onto the bugs and complaints. So as of me recording this on the 8th of October, there are actually server population problems, where each server has a cap of 2,750 people in the world, and if you currently have a character on that world, you have to actually wait in a queue to get into the game, unless you wanted to start on a fresh new server, which if you're a new player is fine, but if you're getting back to the game, you don't really want to re-level everything which you've already done. Hence, you're gonna have to wait 2 to 3 hours on average before you even get into the game. There are also currently latency and stuttering problems, where no matter how good of a computer you have or how good your wired internet connection is, you're gonna get disconnected from the game at random intervals. How often? Well, it depends. It's happened to me where I've waited 3 hours to get in the game, played 30 minutes, and then been disconnected randomly, and then had to wait another 2 hours to get in. However, I haven't really had this happen to me in the last 2-3 days. There are a good few number of bugs, but honestly, let's be real. Every game, especially MMO RPGs, are gonna have bugs. I don't expect a game to have 0 bugs, and I don't think it's a realistic expectation for anyone to have 0 bugs in a game. Now, all that being said, I would say this is an amazing game for the price. It's currently even on sale for Steam for $45, including the base and the expansion, but if you already have the base game, the expansion's $30, but I think it's still worth it. There's also no monthly subscription fee, and the game isn't a pay to win, while you can get different cosmetics and different mounts for real money. It's a buy once and play however much you want, whenever you want kind of game, which is honestly really refreshing. In terms of dollar to dollar ratio, at $45, you could easily sink 100 hours into the game if you go max level and get most of your professions to level 250. Even if you only played it to level 45 and you put in a few more hours in exploring and doing stuff like that, you're easily going to get 45 to 50 hours of gameplay out of it. So on a dollar to hours of video games, you're going to get at least a $1 to 1 hour amount. If you get to end game and you don't even progress on end game and start min-maxing your gear, you're going to easily get to 120, 150 hours. So you're looking at 33 cents per hour, which is phenomenal. well. And then if you really want to get into the end game and really min-max your gear and all that, you can go anywhere upwards of 250 hours, something like that. If you have purchased the game and haven't touched it since release, I would strongly advise that you go and give it another try, as it is not the same game at all as when it was released. Just don't come to Memorana, which is my server. Seriously though, don't come to Memorana. I want to hear everyone's opinion on the game. What do you think of it? Have you tried it? Are you diving back into it? If you don't have it, are you gonna get it? That being said, if you like the video, please give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more content about new games and expansions. Otherwise, that's all I have for now. Peace out.